Hi, I'm Corey Walmsley. I'm CEO of Aurora Borealis Publishing, and I help people get their books out there in a way that really connects with their audience. I help people tell their transformational stories, and those books help other people to grow. So, one of the things I like to do is talk about some things beyond just writing the actual book. And today I wanted to cover a topic that's pretty common to deal with, but it's not something that we usually talk about because people are usually worried about all the like nuts and bolts. They're worried about how do you write the book? How do you publish the book? Who do I work with as an editor? How do I do yada, 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 yada related to the book? When you're writing a book, though, there's stuff going on in your head, right? So I wanted to cover some of that. I was actually talking with a client recently, and that's what prompted this. I wanted to cover some of the big feelings that we have because they're really, really common. This isn't something that just like that one person had going on. Everybody deals with this, especially if you are a type A personality. You consider yourself an alpha personality, somebody who's, a go-getter, a high achiever, a leader, all of those kind of things. If any of those words resonate with you, then this is probably something that you're going to deal with your book. So let's say you've got your book all written. Let's say that you decide to work with a publishing house or an editor or whoever, not necessarily us, but whoever it is you're working with. You are probably going to feel a little panic when you get ready to hand that off. And you may even continue to feel that panic as you're working through the edits, as you're getting your book cover done, as you're doing XYZ in the process, because you just wrote a book. Okay. And when you write a book, you're opening up, even if it's not a lot of personal story. You're opening up. These are things that are in your head, they have embedded into your system. This is a part of you. Okay. A really common analogy is to say that your book is your baby. Lots of people consider their book to be their baby. Um, if you feel that way about your book, it's perfectly normal. You are attached to this body of work because you created it. You're its mom or dad, okay? You have a part of this. So when you go to hand that off, part of you is going to freeze up because you're wondering, okay, are they going to accept my baby? Is my baby ready for this step? Did I do a good enough job teaching my baby how to, go use the potty before it's an emergency? That kind of stuff. It's the same as when you send your kid off to kindergarten. You don't know what to expect. You know that you have entrusted your baby to another human being. And now it's up to that human being to deal with whatever you have downloaded onto that baby or onto that document. So I want you to understand that these things are perfectly normal. My client actually commented that it's a lot like picking a scab. So whenever the editor would, work on the book and get it back to my client would then sit there going, okay, what is this word choice? Is this good? Is this good? Does this make sense? And we're talking more about a nitpicky level. This isn't stuff that is, you know, okay, we're doing the best that we can because we are professionals in this arena. This is more of a fear-based thing. Okay. So if you're feeling like you're really panicked about passing the book off to an editor, passing it off to your publisher, partnering with a publishing house, whatever step it is that you decide to take after the writing, then you have to step back and do a little bit of inner work, do a little bit of, talking yourself down, do a little bit of prepping for the next chapter, basically. Your next chapter, once you've gone through the writing process, is author. And if you want to get from writer to author, then there are things that you have to be prepared for. And one of them is passing your book to professionals. So, how do we do this? How do we get over some of these fears or not get over them? We don't necessarily get over them, but let's say mitigate. How do we mitigate these fears? How do we work with these fears and actually get the book out and celebrate your launch? Well, some things you have to think about are, who am I going to work with? Do I trust them? You're not going to work with somebody that you don't trust, right? You're going to vet the team. You're going to vet your publisher or your editor or whoever you decide to work with. You're not just going to go, oh, yeah, I know them. Here you go. You're going to say, is this a good person to work with me? If you're at the point where you're going through the editing process and you've already, picked somebody, you can't keep saying, I don't know if this is good enough. There's a point where you have to say, I trust you. I selected you, and I trust myself enough to know that I selected you. I selected your team because I know that you're going to help me meet my goal of getting my book published in a way that makes sense, that is clean, that gets it to the people who most need it. You have to trust yourself enough to say that you trust this team, because your team, whoever it is, these are your allies in your book process. These are the people that you've selected. Okay. So trust yourself. You have made a good selection. If you keep second guessing this, then you're not going to get to the author piece. You're going to keep picking that scab, which is gross. You're going to have a bloody manuscript, and you don't want that. You don't want to keep going back in and saying, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? Trust. Believe in yourself and trust the process. And I know that's hard. So that's why I want you to step back and think about these things beforehand, and think about, like, how am I going to handle this? Do I need to have a friend who is really good at talking me down? Do I need to have a coach? Do I need to speak with a business coach and say, hey, connect me with somebody you trust? These are all steps that are perfectly normal. This is probably a new thing, to most people who are publishing. Plenty of people are new, like first-time authors. You have to trust, you have to build trust, and you have to create a space of trust. So you have to find people who you do trust and just trust them. If something feels off to you in your gut, then you probably shouldn't be working with them. Okay. But trust that beforehand and understand where those feelings come from. Is it, oh, I don't feel good about what they just said, I don't trust that? Or is it, oh, I feel really nervous about passing off my manuscript? You have to understand where those feelings are coming from, because if you don't, then you're going to go through the whole process going, what about this? What about this? And you're going to be second guessing the people all the way through, and they're doing their jobs. Okay. So I lovingly say to you to look into that before you get into a position where you feel like you have to pick the scab, and you feel like, oh, what about this? Is this going to be right? 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 You don't want to be in that position. You want to be able to trust and delegate. You want to be able to, just say, I know in my heart that this is what works. And sometimes it's, I know in my head that this makes sense, but you have to feel it here too. So if that's, I'm saying this a couple of different ways because I know people talk different ways about this stuff. If that's where the disconnect is, if you're feeling like, I know it here, but I don't know it here, sit with it, work with it, have an extra conversation with the person and say, hey, I just need to see what you think. I need to see, how do you work with people when they're going through this feeling? Because sometimes that's really helpful. When my client brought that up, I just had an honest conversation with them and said, this is normal. This is how a lot of people feel. This is what I like to do to get through that. I talked to them about some different things, like what I just mentioned here, to help them feel better about getting that book out there. Because when something is that close to your heart, yeah, it's going to be tough to let it go, because you feel like you have to keep it here. You have to keep it in control. But if you keep it here and you keep the control, you can't let it out and let it do its genius. And that's all your good stuff that's coming out and impacting the world. So a bit of a long video today, but I wanted to cover that topic because it is so important to get people from writer to author. And a lot of it is head trash, or a lot of it is not feeling it here. So make sure you work through those feelings so you can get your book published and make that impact.